Hello, Podsmashers of the internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-bit Podsmash,
where gaming goes to grab a drink. And we say drink because we're both on diets.
Again, it's going to happen every January. We're going to be like, we got fat and we need to lose weight. So we're on different diets, though.
We are.
But we are both, I don't know if I'm necessarily making a sacrifice, but it's not that much of a sacrifice.
To drink bourbon?
Bourbon instead of booze.
It's not a sacrifice to me at all. It's a lateral.
Oh, nice. So
it's just as good as beer.
I think I specifically consumed fewer carbs today so that I would make sure that drinking bourbon would be under my limit.
Yes.
So I'm good. So I'm doing keto. I'm trying out the whole high fat, medium protein, low carbs, under 50 grams a day is my goal. And I'm eating lots of pork rinds and cheese and butter. I'm not actually eating a lot of butter, but
by the stick.
It's like I'm eating for as much like cheese and pork rinds that I'm eating. I'm also eating a lot more vegetables. So I'm having like carrots and cucumbers and a lot of leafy green vegetables, so I can get my fiber because I am eating a lot of cheese, and I don't know about the rest of you. But cheese has this particular effect on me that fiber counteracts very well.
Yes.
That's what I'll say.
The after effect.
Yeah. And you are on a diet.
I'm on an anti-inflammatory kind of diet where I'm just focusing on removing things that inflame your system. So I'm not eating any dairy. I'm not eating any gluten. I'm staying away from all meat except chicken or 100% grass-fed beef, of which I'll only have once a week.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the gist of it. It's a balanced diet that has all the different nutrients. I have picked up running again for another marathon training session season, if you will, without an actual marathon race on the calendar, but I'm still following the plan to increase my mileage and do all of the workouts that running entails to make you faster. So I'm working on that.
Yeah, so don't worry. We still are where gaming goes to grab a beer, and at some point we shall be having beer again while we go to gaming grab. But in the meantime, we'll be where gaming goes to grab, just a general alcoholic beverage.
I am ready for beer when you are.
Yeah,
I'll let you dictate that.
Stoked. It should be about the time my son's born.
Yay!
We are your hosts, Penguin and Termite, and
we are a weekly video game podcast, smashing conversations about video games with topics that you care about.
Yeah. All right. So today's topic that we'll be talking about review aggregates and review scores specifically. So what that means is when a game is reviewed by the various journalistic websites that review games, usually they'll give it a score. And so basically we're going to be talking about whether or not we think that score is a fair way to evaluate video games. And we'll be talking about the major aggregate, which is Metacritic, and we'll get into those distinctions later. But first, we want to do what we do at the start of every episode and just kind of update you with news, things going on in the game industry, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about what we're playing.
Since we're coming off of New Year's and Christmas, there's not a whole lot going on in the gaming industry right now because mostly everyone has been on holidays for the last 2 weeks. But we do have this fiasco.
Oh, yes.
Another notch in Bethesda's belt for fiascos.
It's been like 3 months of non-stop Bethesda screw-ups, but go on.
It's been nuts. They released this dark rum limited edition Nuka rum, which is supposed to be like Nuka-Cola, which is in the game. It was supposed to have this special edition like bottle that was shaped like a rocket ship, and it was going to be super sweet and awesome. They did this collaboration with another company called Silver Screen Bottling Company, so we don't really know where the fault lies, but they made this promise that this exclusive glass bottle was going to come to your house and you were going to have a good old time drinking with your friends. What it actually was... Which,
bait and switch.
It, again, with the canvas bag issue, right, is a regular rum bottle that looks like every other one inside of a plastic shell that looks like a rocket ship. So they put two halves around it, and they put a stupid cap in the top. And if you try to pour, like there's a video online of someone doing this, if you try to pour the rum out of the bottle while it's in its plastic case, it spills everywhere. Like it's not meant to be.
So unfortunate. And that's just a regular bottle of rum?
Yep.
Oh.
Well, it's whatever Silver Screen bottling company uses for their dark rum. And we don't know if it's like a rebranded rum or if they actually made it for that. Who knows?
But that's just stop trying to cut costs.
Yeah, it was $80 for a bottle.
That's ridiculous.
Which would be awesome if it's what they promised.
If it's what they promised, yeah, absolutely. That's insane.
But it's not.
Yeah, so since news is kind of slow, we just got out of the holidays, so I think both of us have some updates about what we're planning.
What are you planning?
What you planning? Do it fast.
I got Spyro, the Reignited Trilogy, for Christmas. So I just kind of jumped. It was perfect timing. I just finished Red Dead 2 entirely. So I have the epilogue done.
Nice.
When I say entirely, I don't mean platinum.
Right,
That's not happening.
yeah.
So actually, just right before we started recording, platinum
I was
Spyro
there.
1.
I
You
watched
witnessed
him.
it.
I
My
witnessed
16th platinum and the
16th.
first for 2019.
Nice.
With many more, hopefully, ahead. So I'm looking to jump into 2 and 3. Haven't started them yet, but that's what I'm playing. What are you playing? What are you playing?
I got BioShock Infinite for my not Infinite, BioShock
The set.
collection. Yeah, I got the whole collection for my grandma for Christmas. So, but obviously, I'm probably not going to jump into that right away because this time last year, if y'all remember, was when I was going through my phase of like, I want to just crush all these games that I've had in my backlog. Not all of them, but I was like
It's a
really
good time
focusing
to
on
do
my
it.
backlog. It is. It's a great time to do it. So on the one hand, I'm like, oh, I've got kind of fond memories of that. So maybe I will crack it open and play through like the first few chapters of BioShock 1, but I'm not in a rush to get to it. And there's some other games that I haven't played that I do want to get through. So I treated myself to Darksiders 3 because it was $20 off at GameStop right after Christmas, like 2 days after Christmas. So I was like, sweet, this is on sale. This is about a price that I think is fair based on what I've read about it. So yeah, I grabbed that. It's good. I wouldn't say it's as good as 1 and 2. And there's many reasons for it that I'll get into at some point, probably on the podcast. I will say, as kind of a teaser to my thoughts, where I am now with it, is I feel like it's in the unfortunate situation of trying to both do something new and further the franchise, while also trying too much to be like Darksiders 1, specifically.
Interesting.
So
So it feels a little dated, a little out of times.
No, well, kind of. I guess it's just, I was rather than pick one or the other. If they were going to do Darksiders 1 again, do Darksiders 1 again. And make it feel like that game just with a different protagonist. But it feels like they're trying to do something completely different for the franchise. And the big thing that they actually changed this, the combat system was getting lambasted online because it was a lot like Dark Souls. It was much, much harder than the other existing titles. So they patched in what's called a classic combat mode, and the major difference is that you can now dodge while executing a move. So before it was like Dark Souls, where if you executed a move, you had to see it through, and if you took damage,
had to happen.
Yeah. Whereas with this one now, you can dodge in between. So I've been using classic mode because I enjoy that a little bit better than
And you put on easy, right?
No, I put it on normal.
Okay.
I like a balanced thing.
Right.
So it's good. I'm enjoying it, but I definitely would not have wanted to pay full price, and I would have not wanted to get it when they didn't have the classic mode patched in. So yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's what I'm playing.
As we talked about, January being a time where there's not a whole lot coming out, there's a million games I haven't played, a million things I haven't done, and now's the time to kind of jump into that. It's kind of a lull. What is the next game, the soonest game? I don't know what word I'm looking for. Which game of all of the 2019 anticipated games is coming out first that you're excited about?
I guess Anthem.
Okay.
And like it's a hesitated excitement. The one that I'm actually like sold on and will probably buy it close to day one, if not day one, is Days Gone.
Ooh, yeah, April.
But there's stuff that comes out before that too. But it was a February. Like in my head, it's still a February release, even though I know it's not. But I'm like, oh yeah, I want to play that game. But I would say that, the one that's coming out first that's on my radar of like, I really want this to be good and I really want to play it is Anthem.
Okay. Mine is Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is like January 25th
Nice.
or something. I don't know. It's the 29th is Kingdom
I want to
Hearts
just come
3.
over and watch you play that.
I'm not going to get a day one. I'm going to probably find it on sale and wait.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I'm going to take this time and I'm going to play my backlog. So I'm going to
Yeah.
finish Spyro and I'm going to move.
What's the first game that you're going to play after Spyro?
Rise of the Tomb Raider, which I've been
Finally
sitting
getting
on
to it. It's
for
so
like
good.
a year and a half.
It's definitely I've heard that Shadow of the Tomb Raider was a couple steps back.
Yeah.
Rise of the Tomb Raider was like a worthy successor to the first one.
Good.
It really took what the first one did well, expanded upon it, and was so much fun. I really enjoyed Rise of the Tomb. I enjoyed Rise of the Tomb Raider almost as much as I enjoyed Uncharted 4.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
It's fun. So I am looking forward to Shadow of the Tomb Raider, even though I've heard some
I'll tell you why in just
somewhat
a second.
disappointing things.
I need to confirm a fact in my head before I say things, because I like to make sure that I'm factual. Okay, so the first two Tomb Raider reboots were made by Crystal Dynamics entirely. The third one was made by Eidos Montreal with help from Crystal Dynamics, which is why the third one felt a little off
from what people said. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm still looking forward to it. I'm borrowing it from you, and I'm going to crack that.
Yeah, I got it for Christmas, and I'm like, okay, fire under butt to finish Rise of Tomb Raider. For some reason, I'm more excited about Shadow than I was Rise, but
cool.
Yeah, so there we go.
All right.
Return.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to our first real segment of the podcast, which is
doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Favorite things.
Favorite things. What's favorite thing?
There's so much because we haven't recorded in forever.
I know.
I'm going to say that my favorite thing is recording again because we took a hiatus. And I was looking forward to recording so much, and I missed this.
Yeah, there was so much going on in the holidays. So we're actually at a point again where we're kind of behind. So this will actually feel more up to date when it's released, as opposed to a lot of our episodes have been kind of far in advance. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this one should feel a little bit more.
That's why I wanted to talk about what games do you want to play that are coming out sooner, so that it's Resident Evil 2, Kingdom Hearts 3 time.
Yeah, but I was hosting like family back to back all Christmas week and into the New Year week too. I was
you were.
Oh my gosh. So it is nice to kind of get back to this. Is to me, it feels like I'm entering back into a sense of normalcy. Like going to work. I wasn't excited about working, but I kind of was excited about going back to work and then doing this because I'm like, now life is normal again. So now I'm not like, schedules. I'm not dealing with people. I'm not dealing with family, and like, don't get me wrong. I love my family. I love my brother and sister-in-law and the rest of my in-laws and my wife's side of the family. But concentrated family time is like in its own way disruptive as much as it is just relaxing.
Yep.
Like there's a party that's always like, yeah. So it's nice to just kind of like be back in my home without other people there.
Right here.
Yep, and right here.
On this table.
Yeah, this is my home. Although I will say my favorite thing does have to do with me and my brother-in-law. Shout out Michael, also known as Dingus Turd, also known as Brizzle McFizzle's husband. He and I...
Also known as Dutch.
He's also known as Dutch. I introduced him to Red Dead Redemption 2, and we spent the entire rest of the week talking like cowboys. Both of us were Dutch, so
everyone was Dutch.
Like, everyone was Dutch. We were just Dutch. Like at first, for a while, I tried doing like Dutch's voice, and I'd be like Arthur, but it wasn't as fun as doing Arthur's voice and going like, Dutch. But that's not my favorite thing. My favorite thing is me and Dutch went to Krispy Kreme donuts like 3 times and got fresh. Like a dozen fresh Krispy Kreme donuts, and we would eat them in the parking lot. We'd eat like one in the parking lot and then take the rest home. But there's nothing sweeter than just a fresh, like right off of the assembly line, whatever, like fryer line, Krispy Kreme donut. It melts in your mouth. Like, it does. You don't even get a chance to chew it. Like your juices of your mouth dissolve it before. Oh, it's so good.
Way before you entered my life. My wife and I were married and dating. And we used to regularly go to Krispy Kreme when they first opened in Fredericksburg. It was a new thing. It was like, ooh, fresh hot donuts. Never had this before. And we would get a half a dozen and just 3 each, like right there with coffee or milk.
So good.
Regularly.
It's so, and
that's
gonna fatten you.
That was before I started this whole marathon thing. So,
it was good. My other favorite thing, real quick, as sort of more of an honorable mention, is I've been watching the new season of Doctor Who. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. So to all you Whovians out there, I am one of you. And so I've been watching the new season, and I have been liking the new Doctor, the new female Doctor, but there has felt like there's been a disconnect with this season to the rest of the show because the new showrunner who took over and made the Doctor a woman, like his whole thing was he was like, I want to like out with the old, in with the new. I don't want to do any of the old villains. And so there hasn't really been a lot of like tie-ins with the rest of the show. So, but they did a New Year's Day episode and they brought back the classic enemies of the Doctor, the Daleks, and it was a really good episode. Like the Daleks tend to be played out because they've been in the show for so long and they look like pepper pots mixed with R2-D2 mixed with like a tank. Like they're really dumb looking. Like I will objectively say the Daleks are dumb looking. It's only like the canonical, like what they can do that makes them any kind of intimidating. And so there's not a lot of stories with Daleks that are interesting. And he nailed it. Like the new show writer nailed it. The new Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, she did an excellent job because that's always the test of a new Doctor is how are they going to interact with the Daleks? Like what is there going to be? What's going to be their personality in the face of their most hated enemy? And it was great. It was an excellent episode. So that was my other little favorite thing.
Nice.
Yeah. Doctor Who, it's back.
Nice.
So cool.
Man, I could talk for hours about my favorite things.
I know.
But we don't have time for that.
Well, maybe we'll do a spin-off podcast and make favorite things an entire.
Well, with the holidays.
Because that's like what you guys want to hear is just
3 or 4 gifts that I got that were all my favorite things.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to our last segment before our main topic, which is DLC.
Downloadable content.
Downloadable content is a segment of our podcast where we like to have like a sort of, I call it a sub-discussion. It's more like just a more fun kind of topic that we can have fun with. It's content generated by the brains of these two Dans.
Our names are both Dan, and DLC is a play on words for video games.
Yup.
It's exactly what you think it is.
So many things.
Yep. It's awesome.
All right, so our DLC today is a subtle nod to our episode number. So for those who are sharper and keener listeners, you might understand why DLC is what it is, but in the honor of subtlety, I will just sort of explain what our DLC is for today.
All
so
right.
We're doing a blank, and what's going to happen is I will be picking a contest. So who would win in a contest of some sort that I shall choose.
Mm-hmm.
And Termite shall be picking 2 video game couples. So it'll end up being 4 video game characters.
Ooh.
But they're pairs, romantically entangled pairs. So I will let our keener listeners put together the pieces as to why specifically it's that form of DLC, and I will let you come up with your 2 characters because I already have my contest.
We will do 2 couples.
2 couples, so 4 characters.
I think it would behoove me not to pick. No, that's the wrong way. You're going to cut all of this. Link and Zelda.
Link and Zelda, okay.
I feel like it's obligatory.
That's one couple.
Giving our base of what we talk about all the time.
Okay.
We bring it up constantly.
Yeah, sure, Link and Zelda, and then what's another couple?
Cloud and Tifa.
Ooh, Cloud and Tifa. Okay, so your contest. So who would win in a blank? Cloud and Tifa or Link and Zelda? Do you remember the show that came on in the, like, maybe, the mid-90s, early and mid-90s? It was called Wife Swap.
Yeah. Yep.
So, if Tifa and Cloud were married, and if Zelda and Link were married, who would be the more entertaining wife swap? Tifa with Zelda? No.
Wow.
Tifa with Zelda. Zelda with Cloud or Link with Tifa? And who would present themselves better? Who would win? I don't know if you would win wife swap. Of course, nothing inappropriate happening with wife swap. It's just a show where, like, these wives would come into these other homes and they would, like, mess things up and make the kids be all like, what's going on? This is weird. You parent differently. That's,
Sure. Discipline skills, cooking skills, house around them, attitude.
And I guess with video game characters, it would literally be like, okay, now Tifa is the princess of Hyrule. How does she handle that? And Zelda would be some slum bar waitress.
I don't think Tifa would handle being a princess.
Royalty well?
Yeah. I think she would definitely offend the monarchs and the royalty very quickly.
But she'd be so supportive of Link. And she'd actually be able to do something.
You mean like fight?
Yeah, maybe if that at that time, like Ganondorf shows up and she just like, what is it, Seventh Heavens him in the face?
Yeah.
Like no problem.
She would just ninja kick him.
Like, ain't no man gonna imprison me in a castle. Tifa. How do you think Zelda would be as a Midgar bar waitress?
Oh, she'd be
opposite
totally out of her element. I mean,
but Cloud would never look better in his cross-dress.
That's true.
Uniform.
Yep.
Should that happen? But she would be very out of her element.
Yeah.
She kind of, I feel like her and Ares would get along really well, or they'd be so similar that they'd like bicker constantly.
Well, that brings up how I think Cloud would interact with Zelda. And I think that would be the same way as Aeris.
Yeah, exactly.
Except for the fact that, Tifa was Cloud's childhood friend and they have a lot of history and a lot of emotional complexity going on with Cloud leaving and joining the army but coming back, lying, and all of that stuff that happens in the plot. I feel like Final Fantasy VII is a game about Tifa and how she reacts to this response.
Zelda would be so cold. Just completely.
Yeah, right. Zelda would
in
just
fact,
be like,
I'm pretty sure Zelda would probably like secretly be like, she would actually stab Ares before.
Yeah.
I feel like she'd be really jealous of Ares just in general. Like, oh, you can do magic better than me. Oh.
Zelda does seem kind of spiteful.
Oh, a sword. Whoops. How did that sword end up there? She would have like warp.
It's funny though, because she doesn't seem to pawn after anyone except for saving her kingdom. That's Zelda's motif. That's what she wants to do, always. It's just saving the kingdom.
They gave her some depth in Breath of the Wild, where she was, again, she felt inadequate because she couldn't do the prayers right or whatever and awaken her powers. So,
yeah, even in Skyward Sword, as like the goddess of the, what was it called? Goddess of something?
Light?
maybe? That sounds just say random words. It's like Mad Lib for Zelda describing the plot. That's how much sense it makes.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she was like doing the ceremony and was fearing inadequacy and those things too. So maybe she would just be self-conscious in a bar, like freaking out. Like
so then that brings us to the question: Who do you think would be the better wife swap?
They're both pretty much garbage trucks on fire.
They really are. Like, and they're both out of their elements and out of their depths. I say Tifa only because I really want the mental image of her, like, bypassing the entire reincarnation cycle by using seventh heaven on Ganondorf.
Using Ocarina of Time as the center point of all Zeldas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the story of Ocarina of Time. You didn't mention any other game. It's just that one. You immediately
Twilight Princess? No, because they all show up. Like, it could have been Zant.
Actually, she would just ninja kick him too.
In my mind, that's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Right. It's like any villain shows up, like,
because they always show up to Zelda first, and then Link comes along later and saves the day. So if like Zelda was actually capable in the first place, then they wouldn't have any problems.
Circles right back around to her inadequacy issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going with Tifa on this one.
Yeah, I think so too.
Tifa and Link. Tifa and Link are the more interesting wife swap.
Yep.
All right, that's it. If you have other thoughts of your own, or if you want to come up with your own video game wife swap that you think would be interesting, video game couples that you think would be interesting if they swapped for a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us know. Tweet at us. Find us on Reddit. We have a subreddit. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 80bit Podsmash. No hyphens, no uppercases, no funny business.
Awesome. All right. Let's
jump into
our main topic. So like we said at the onset, we are going to be talking about review scores. And so let's start where we always start. What are review scores?
So various websites online, whenever a new game comes out, have their review. And it's usually an article or a video. Some have scores posted at the end, some do not. And they rank or rate and discuss, argue for or against why a particular game is good or bad.
Yeah, and for the purposes of this episode, we're primarily going to be talking about the review sites and reviewers that specifically boil down a game to a numerical value, a numerical number exactly. So whether that's 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 or 100 out of 100, whatever that scale looks like, what they have in common is 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever. Like they kind of boil it down to a number of some kind.
Yeah. How do they get there?
And what is why a number, and what effects does that number have on the rest of the industry at large? Because it's way more interesting than you might think.
Spoiler alert, it's a lot.
It
affects the industry a lot.
It's crazy. It's surprising how you think it's just like, oh, this is for consumers. Nope. It's unfortunately not just for consumer convenience.
Right.
So, who are the major players that we're going to be talking about? I guess who is the major video game review aggregate, and what is a video game review aggregate?
And a review aggregate website is a review website that grabs all of the reviews and scores from various websites that have proven themselves as being relevant and smart, and they have a track record, and they take all of those review scores and average them. The biggest one in the gaming industry is Metacritic.
Yep.
In the movie industry, it's Rotten Tomatoes. They both do the same thing. They grab from all of the popular critics, the ones that have been established, and they average the scores out to give you one single number per title.
Yeah, and what doesn't Metacritic do movies as well?
They do.
Okay, yeah. So Metacritic does both movies and video games, but there's no other additional one for video games. So
not
just
that I know of.
It's just Metacritic. Yeah.
If there is, they're smaller.
Yeah, it's not popular enough to really have an influence on things. So games are reviewed and boiled down to a single number by Metacritic, by this aggregate. How are they evaluated that way, and what's good or bad about this process?
They are. I'm going to read from the FAQ.
The FAQ.
FAQ. Frequently
how do they do
asked
this?
question.
How do they do this?
The question is, how does Metacritic score their reviews, right?
How do they evaluate
the
them?
overall score, or Metascore, is a weighted average of the individual critic scores. Why a weighted average? When selecting our source publications, we noticed that some critics consistently write better, quote, more details, more insightful, more articulate reviews than others. In addition, some critics and or publications typically have more prestige and respect in their industry than others. To reflect these factors, we have assigned weights to each publication, and in the case of movies and television, to individual critics as well, thus making some publications count more in the Metascore calculations than others.
So in summary, a small beans review website like Penguin and Termite, for example. If we were to review Darksiders 3,
we'd have to get noticed.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, hypothetically, if we were to review a game like Darksiders 3 and we wrote out a detailed review, it wouldn't really affect the score that much. It might affect, if we gave it a super low review, we might affect it by half a point if it's total, out of 100. If we're lucky, they get half a point affected. Right. Whereas IGN, if they review a game, they're huge. They have a lot of weight to throw around. So their weight has more of an influence on what the final score is. But overall, they just sort of take all the 5 out of 5s, all the 4 out of 5s, all the 3 out of 5s, and they average it together and basically make what is the game's Metacritic Metascore or whatever they call it.
One of the first layers of complexity with this is weight and how they keep it confidential. It is so developers and publishers don't target and pressure publications as well as not have to explain themselves when they change, lower, or raise the specific publication's weight score. So they might actually come after Penguin and Termite and be like, they are a brand new startup, probably a very grassroots, low to the ground, very heavy consumer influenced by just the mom and pop crop shops. And so we should weight their score higher than IGN because they don't have any publicity at all. So you have no idea. Like that's the point I'm trying to make. It's like Metascore weights all these things however they want.
Yeah.
And the reason why it matters is because of how it influences developers and publishers and how much weight, pun intended, the Metascore has on the industry.
So what is good about this system? Is there anything redeeming about the way that the system works?
What I like about it is this is a very consumer-friendly way of determining whether or not I should make a smart purchase. If I want a new game comes out, like Anthem's coming, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait entirely for all the reviews to hit, and I'm going to go to Metacritic, and I'm going to get that one single average. And I know that it's coming from a crazy amount of different sources. It might be or may not be weighted properly. I also have some other sources I would find, but I like Metacritic because it's a single one-stop. You can read everything. There's links to it all there. And that's what its intention is. And that's a pro. That's why Metacritic is good.
And you can kind of balance it versus there's user scores too. So users can go in there and sure, you get a lot of people who trash a game, but then you'll also get some people who are like, I always like to read the like middle. I always trust because the 10 out of 10s that users give are people who just are fanboys that are like, it's so good. It's amazing. They don't necessarily say why. And then you got the other end of the spectrum where you have, this is 0 out of 10 because of this one thing I didn't like, or because I don't like this franchise. It's people who haven't even played the game that are like, this is stupid and don't buy it.
Right.
Whereas the middle scores, I generally trust like anywhere between like a 4 and a 7. I'm like, okay, I'll actually want to hear what you have to say about it because like you're probably someone who has actually played the game and realistically analyzed it. Yeah. So it's nice because you can kind of balance those against the critics' scores and as we've seen in the last 10 years of both movies and games, a game that does critically well, a game or movie that does critically well doesn't always do well with the fans, and vice versa. Games and movies that do critically poorly sometimes do incredibly well with audiences. So Aquaman is a great example of that, of the latter, and The Last Jedi is a great example of the former. Like, so, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think that the biggest, it's very consumer friendly. It's very, it's nice where you can kind of just go in and be like, all right, how's this game doing?
Yeah. Is this any good? Should I buy it?
Exactly. Yeah. What are some of the downsides of this kind of evaluation?
The cons to this are there's no context to a number. A consumer evaluating a product with the idea of whether I should buy it or not in their head is totally different from a critic looking to read some reviews on whether or not I should nominate this game for an award. And you have no way of distinguishing that if the score is really low versus really high, because if people don't like it, but it's actually really good, then your critical eye is going to suffer.
Yeah.
If the game is horrible and people love it, like your idea, I guess, with Aquaman, right? It's not a high class, Oscar movie,
right? It's popcorn
but it's making tons of money. You wouldn't know that either by just seeing the 85 on the website or the 60 that you would see. So that's kind of a con. It's muddy. You don't really know. It's subjective. There's no objective scale for which to give a score a game. You might think the music is terrible and jarring. It doesn't jive with the feel and look and mechanics of the game, but I might absolutely love it and have headphones on and like adore this music and go find the soundtrack.
Right. It makes me immediately think of Bayonetta 1 and how like the very first time I played Bayonetta 1, I was not expecting that the battle music would be a female cover of "Fly Me to the Moon" by Frank Sinatra.
That's amazing.
So I'm like fighting these angels like as a witch, and I'm hearing "Fly me to the moon and let me sail among the stars." I'm like, this is so jarring.
Yeah.
But by the time I finished the game, I loved it. So no, I get what you mean by like whoa, like one thing, someone might hear that and be like, oh, that's such a stupid choice for an action hack and slash Devil May Cry clone.
Yep.
And someone else might be like, oh my gosh, that was genius. Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the subjectivity of the reviews, like you might rate that game lower than me for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really an objective reason to change your review.
Yeah,
you know?
so there's no rubric almost of like, if you're going to give a score this, then you need to be able to demonstrate how it failed at this or succeeded at this.
But then if you boiled video games down to an objective paradigm, then where do you leave room for art?
Innovation,
it's like, okay, how many bugs does it have? Okay,
Yeah.
10 bugs, you dock this game 20 points.
Yeah.
You know, like, does the music fit the game? Like, how do you objectively, okay, the music is running at 96 kilobits per second bit stream, so it's of adequate quality.
Yeah.
But it's just some kid whispering in the corner and it's not really a song.
Right.
Like, you know, like, where do you draw the line? Yeah, that's the music for your fight. Like, it's just that. But it meets the objectivity. It has the bit stream and it doesn't bug or crash out. Like, you know? So that's the problem with review scores.
Yeah.
Is boiling down all of the intricacies of art and creativity down to a number. It's a problem for movies too.
Yeah. So we get that. So the problem is that it boils down to a number. What's the bigger issue then? Why is this number so damaging or such a danger to the industry?
All right, I'm going to give you a real life example of why this is bad. Obsidian developed Fallout New Vegas for Bethesda. Bethesda was the publisher, Obsidian was the developer. It's a post-apocalyptic RPG. It averaged an 85 on Metacritic. It got an 84 on PC and Xbox 360 and an 82 on the PS3. If New Vegas had hit an 85 across the board, Obsidian would have gotten their bonus. According to one person familiar with the situation who asked not to be named while speaking to Kotaku, of which I am quoting now, shout out to Jason Schreier from many years ago, who continues to write amazing content for Kotaku. He's my like favorite games
man
journalist.
Crush.
Yeah.
You got a man crush on
If
him.
I could ever review him, I would just gush. He's awesome. So please go to Kotaku.com. This is where I found this information. We'll link off to it in the show notes. The bonus was worth $1 million if they were to reach an 85. For a team of 70 or so people, that averages out to $14,000 a person, which is...
That's enough for a car.
Yeah, like mortgage payments. That's huge.
How many Nintendo Switches is that?
I don't know. 14,000 divided by 300. Somewhere
That's a lot
around
of Nintendo
4,000.
Switches. Think about how many Nintendo Switches they could have bought.
So they didn't get that bonus because it didn't reach an 85 on Metacritic. So that's one highlight.
So it literally cost them money. Like, what it boils down to is the publisher promised them to give them more money if they reached a arbitrary number that random people...
Well, it's not too arbitrary. 85 is like on the scale of acceptability when it comes to for developers to pitch games.
Yeah.
We're going to go into the developer perspective of this and the publisher perspective. So Bethesda here is the publisher. They're expecting a game of 85 or higher quality.
Right, but
I
guess my point is they aren't basing their bonus off how much it sells, how much money,
it has nothing to
how
do
much
with
money
consumer
that
success.
Bethesda makes off of it. No, it's just how much money or how well did people receive the game.
Exactly.
Which again, as we mentioned before, is very subjective and like can be subverted. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
So like anything else, if there's a way to make money and a carrot dangling on a stick, you're going to cut every corner.
Yeah.
You're going to do every manipulative thing. You're going to shake the earth to make sure that you put every odd in your favor. All the odds, everything, any possibility that you can get that money, make that money.
Yeah.
They're going to do it. Right. So now we're going to break down these perspectives. So like also quoting from 2008 in Kotaku, I did a lot of research here. From the developer perspective, if they know that higher review scores mean more money, game producers are thus encouraged to identify the elements that reviewers seem to most notice and most like: detailed graphics, scripted set-piece battles, robust online multiplayer, player choice, and more of everything. This is quoting a developer named Burns. He's saying this. Like a food company performing a taste test to find out that people basically like the saltiest, greasiest variation of anything and adjusting its product lineup accordingly, the big publishers struggled to stuff as much of those key elements as possible into every game they funded.
Yeah, so instead of like innovating and trying new things that, again, it's kind of like you don't know that nobody knew they wanted Journey until they got it. You know what I mean? Nobody knew that they wanted, gosh, what's a great other example? Horizon Zero Dawn. Nobody really knew they wanted it until they got it. Like, nobody knew they wanted a Zelda game to be Skyrim until they got it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't, if they know, like, oh, this is going to sell, they're just going to keep going after that as opposed to trying new things.
Right.
And innovate. So, and then if they just keep making the same game over and over again, like, that's all people are ever going to get is the same. That's how we got Call of Duty ad infinitum, you know?
Yep. There is a non-child friendly word that you will call anyone who loves graphics and just chases after the best looking graphics. And we're not going to say what that word is, but like that. So we got to focus on the graphics, and we have to make the best graphically.
Snob.
Yeah, you go, graphic snob. And I feel like The Order 1886 was a good example of this, because it was absolutely a filmography, cinematic, beautiful, gorgeous set piece. It looked fantastic. The animations were great, but it had little plot and shallow character development, and the gameplay was short, and it was a copy of Gears of War as far as gameplay mechanics, so it felt like not complete.
Yeah.
But it was gorgeous. So maybe that's what they're when they go to their publisher, which Sony published that game exclusively for PlayStation 4 by Santa Monica Studios, I believe.
Yep.
People who made God of War. And yeah, so they just chase after one aspect. And then there's the opposite, or not opposite, but another example is the robust online multiplayer.
Yeah.
Call of Duty Black Ops 4, no single player campaign. They just announced that they're not going to have that. So we're going to go on to publisher perspective now. So publishers can negotiate portions of the requested budget to be dispersed if the game makes a certain rating. So just like Obsidian's example, they got their bonus if it hit 85 or not. But let's just say you're a developer and you come to me and you're like, hey, I want to make this game for you. I need $1 million. Or I'm sorry, I need $1.2 million to make this game. That's how much it's going to cost. I've done my estimates. I know my team. I know our system. We need $102 million to make your game. And I'm going to look at you and be like, okay, I'll offer you $1 million. And I'll only pay you the extra $200,000 if your game reaches a certain score. Even if the game sells the most amazing, breaks every record, millions of copies sold, it just makes billions. I'm rich, the publisher's rich, but the developers only get what's signed in that contract. Because I funded you initially, you didn't make that game without my money, I got all of my money back and more.
Right.
So you see the disjointedness here. It's like the review score versus the consumer success has you can't disjoint that. It's so bad.
Right, yeah. Part of me is like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, maybe we should find a way to reward developers for making a good game. You know what I mean? Like, for making a game that does, you know, and review scores are, in a way, the only way we have to do that. But, on the other hand, I'm like, we, the consumers, should reward. Like, the reward shouldn't come from the people who are also profiting off of the final product. Because like you said, the commercial success can be good, but it could be panned by a couple of developers reviewers who subjectively just don't like it for one reason or another, and then they lose money as a result of that. That's not fair.
Nope. So, and that goes into another segue of another crooked example of this whole system is publishers can hire mock reviewers to come in at the early stages of development and review their game. And with that, they are legally not allowed to write the final consumer review, which feeds Metacritic, because they've come in early, they saw advanced footage, they signed an NDA, they're done. Like, they can come in and do it early and get paid for that and not write the actual final review. So they know who usually gives negative reviews. The publishers know this. And so they'll hire these negative-ish people to come in and mock review their games simply to sideline them when the consumer reviews go live, so that they can, again, increase their chances of getting the higher review score.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's so...
This is all centered around Metacritic scores. It's all about the Metacritic scores.
Right,
now,
and then Metacritic's profiting off of all of it, too. So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Crazy.
they're the ones that just... Well, there's an interview with them, and they have no comment about any of that, because to them, from their perspective, none of how they treat it is their responsibility. They're an aggregate website that produces... a single score for all of this. And they've been doing it since the beginning, and they're consumer friendly. They even say it's the consumer minded interest. So it's y'all's fault that you're doing it this way.
Yeah.
But from a publisher perspective, I do want to give a nod as a business. They're trying to reduce risk. They're trying to make money. That's what you're doing.
Right.
So they're not entirely wrong with this whole bonus system. Like, okay, you're going to pay I'm going to fork out $1.2 million on a company I don't really know is going to produce good stuff. Like, that's a lot of money. I want to reduce that risk by saying, here's $1 million. You can get your 200,000 if you do a really good job.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of like rewarding your work.
But if, at my work, if I do a good job and the company does well, I get a bonus based on the revenue the company gets. You know what I mean? I get a bonus if the company does. I get a bonus if the company does commercially successful. But if you say I'm going to give you $1.2 million for a game, but I'm going to withhold $200,000 as a bonus, that bonus better be contingent on how much money I make for you, not how much people like the game, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if they don't like the game, that's their fault for buying it.
So I imagine there's stuff written in contracts that say they get X percentage of the profits made.
Probably.
There's got to be. That's the only way to target or to counter that. As a developer, you're like, okay, I'll take your $1 million with your $200,000 bonus if we do a good job, and I want 5% of all of the revenue or something.
Right.
There's got to be.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, but it just seems scummy to me that they also
it totally
can
is.
base it off of these.
But like I said earlier, anything involving a bonus or any kind of money, or you center all of your merit around a Metacritic score, you're going to do every shady thing, stuffing your game full of extra hours of gameplay to make sure that that feels like it has more value to the customer, so that consumer reviews are higher. And then you have this whole mock review hiring thing to sideline your there's so many little things to do.
Yeah.
I also read little tidbits about how publishers and developers will send reviewers free swag to kind of embellish them and pan for a good review. So I listen to some podcasters. I love them all about video game stuff. They'll talk about all the stuff developers send them, and they'll even say they don't influence our review scores.
Well, that's what the whole canvas bag debacle was. The actual canvas bags went to the influencers.
Yep. Yeah. Go figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's everything about getting that Metacritic score boosted.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it to you guys, the audience, to trust Metacritic or not, however you do. I kind of do, because I understand where Metacritic stands on this. Like I said earlier, they just grab all the review scores and they weight them a certain way. They're not influenced by this at all.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, I guess that's a good segue into this would have been our last question, but let's talk about it now, and then we'll talk about some of the other ones.
Okay.
And that is just what do we do about that? What do we do about this problem? What do we as the consumers, what do we as the driving people of the culture how do we address this issue? So that's twofold. A, is there an alternative way to properly evaluate games on behalf of the consumer? And B, how do we as consumers treat the Metacritic score? And how do we let that affect our purchasing, knowing that this kind of thing has bigger impacts on the type and quality of games that are developed?
The effective way to evaluate games on behalf of the consumer is to stay objective as far as you have to find people who are in the gaming industry, if this matters to you and you care about reviews. Find people who aren't easily persuaded by developers and publishers trying to trick the system.
Yeah.
So you need to find people you can rely on, establish trust, and you can do that by looking at their history, by researching who they are, if they're a podcast company, listen to their stuff, see if you can kind of create some sort of weird relationship with them, because we're not talking to them individually. But
right.
There's websites that I trust higher than others. I will go straight to Polygon and Kotaku and IGN last on that list, but Kotaku and IGN first, and then I'll listen to some of my podcasts and listen to what they have, and I kind of make my own decision based on those guys, because so I'm my own aggregate. I'm my own from what I trust.
Right. The answer for me is, unfortunately, it's so complicated.
Yeah, I mean, what I just described is not easy. It's because I care about games,
and it's tricky because you've got the fact that games are subjective. You got the fact that one person's going to like something or dislike something that you might end up liking.
Mm-hmm.
It's also unfortunate because a number doesn't always accurately reflect the quality of a game.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my short answer of if I could take this incredibly complicated topic and boil it down to one single tidbit would be to say that find people, and this might be just friends of yours. It might not even be people on the internet, but find a community of people who appreciate the same things that you do about games, and let them be the primary motivators towards your consumption. Because that's when we're going to get, oh, hey, that's really the biggest influence for me is if one of my friends comes up to me and says, hey, I know you like quality story-driven games that have like good, satisfying action beats and are like between 20 and 40 hours of gameplay. Like, I know that about you. You should play this. That to me is going to be more influential than a Metacritic score.
Yeah.
But I also acknowledge that, like, I also too use Metacritic, you know? Like, if I am unsure about a game and it just came out and I really want to buy it because of what I've seen, but no one else I know has played it and really can speak to it, like, yeah, I'm going to turn to what's quick and easy score. So I can't say we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, the scores are useful. When I see that a game's getting 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10s, that was what pushed me over the edge to buy Spider-Man, was how it was being reviewed.
And that goes into another idea about this whole thing is there's certain games that are just so good they blow away every reviewer, and all of this meticulous like nickel and diming and trying to persuade the score is just irrelevant. Like, it's so freaking good that it's a 9 or 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And actually,
there have been so many of those in the last 2 years.
There have been. Gaming has gone nuts. And it's actually probably going to affect the review scale because they're all so good now. We're like, whoa.
Yeah, and
we need to figure out a way to judge these with more nuance.
It's crazy because you hear people saying like, "Oh, gaming is a dying art." Like people are making, and I think that there is some truth to that with some genres of games. And I would say that primarily where we're seeing a lot of failure is multiplayer games. I think the single player market is thriving.
It really is.
Because even middling single player games are still really fun to play. Like I would say Darksiders 3 is middling for me, but I am enjoying the heck out of it because it's a fun single player popcorn romp.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting great, amazing things out of Darksiders. It's very much just kind of it's
a good B game.
Yeah, like a B game.
Yeah,
exactly.
I would agree with you. Single player games are definitely on the rise.
Yeah.
But multiplayer has not died. In fact, it is exploding.
Yeah, it's not
It's
dead,
also growing. But Fortnite has hands down outsold everything.
That's fair. Yeah.
And Call of Duty's on the top 10 list for holiday sales again.
Yep,
just like it is every year. And so is FIFA, and so is Madden, and so...
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say it's dying, but you always hear people complaining about multiplayer. You always
people
hear
in our
people
circles,
more about
people in our circles,
games.
our
That's
age and
true.
stage, they complain about multiplayer stuff, but it is not going anywhere. It is insane. I want to give a shout out to one game who fell victim to all of this, and I just learned about it today through Colin's Last Stand is a website / set of podcasts I listen to. A guy named Colin Moriarty. He just posted his top 10 from 2018, and he said Detroit Become Human was on his list, and he said it was a really short, like 1-sentence blurb, and it made so much sense in the context of my research for this episode. He said, developers and publishers and influencers and reviewers have a beef with David Cage, the creator of that game, and so it was shoved under the rug. He said this game, and he spoke volumes for it, which I also agree with every word he said, because I love Detroit Become Human. It's awesome. I loved Heavy Rain on the PS3, developed by the same guys. It's such a good game, and everything you described about how you love story-driven games with good action beats, like that describes Detroit Become Human perfectly. Yeah. And I don't think you're going to find a raving review about it that would tell you that outside of me.
Yeah.
And so there's a good example. Go play Detroit Become Human. I haven't finished it yet. I have it on my shelf when I do, because it's
I'll never get to borrow it.
Well, it's less than 20 hours if you go through it once, but it has multiple endings. And apparently, it's a pretty easy platinum, so I might try to do that. We'll see how it gets when I get to it. But it's a pretty short experience. I can probably jump in there like right after Spyro before I jump into something else. If you're aching to borrow,
I'm not aching to borrow it. I've got plenty. But go ahead.
Yeah, but you need to play it. It's so good, and that's a perfect example. And it's sad. Like. It got decently reviewed online, but no one had any airtime with it. And that's the last aspect of the whole review debacle is influencers, podcasters, websites are only going to show what gets them clicks, likes, shares, and follows. And if they don't like a certain thing, they can kind of collectively bomb that. And that's, it's sad because Detroit Become Human is an awesome story.
Democracy in action.
It is.
It's the tyranny of the majority, man.
Yep. And so the loud majority in this situation let that game just kind of fizzle out and never gave it any limelight. And there are a lot of games that do that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Before we finish, I want to kind of talk about, so obviously, as you mentioned, there are some games that are just really good, but how do we determine if a game is quote unquote perfect? Because I remember you made a comment one time where you'd said, like, I don't think a game that's marked I don't think a game that is marked 10 out of 10 should have any flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still think that?
I kind of do. It depends on the scale. And this is where we get into our conversation. Because I think if you have a 100-point scale, if you give it 100 out of 100 because of the minutia of flexibility in that number, you can say, if it's buggy but it's perfect, I can give it a 95.
Right, because if you score 100 on a test, that means you got every answer right.
Exactly.
So if you score 100 on a game, that means 100 out of 100, that means you should have gotten every single thing, graphics, story, acting, innovation, like everything should be like
absolutely mind-blowing.
Perfect.
And the only game I can think of in recent time that has ever met that or even come close is Breath of the Wild. And it's because it's completely bug-free, which is amazing. And so, I would still stand by that. Now, if you have a 5-point scale, which is like the stark opposite, 5 out of 5, you're going to give a lot of games a 5 out of 5 because there's not a lot of wiggle room for minutia to figure out, like, how buggy is it? Or
what do you do? Do you give games 4.8, 4.9?
Yeah, and then
because then you have to...
At that point, you're doing 48 and 49. And,
exactly,
Yeah.
So, or you're doing like 8, whatever that, 80... 89.
Right.
Yeah. 91.
But
whatever.
I was talking specifically about a 10 out of 10, and I think it would benefit a website or a reviewing entity to hold out the 10 out of 10s specifically for near perfect, not just masterpieces.
Games that you would score on a 100-point scale that you would score 95 and above,
right,
would be a 10 out of 10. I agree. Yeah,
and so I think Red Dead and Spider-Man are 9s and 8s. Like they're amazing games, but they each got 10s from various places, not all of them. And I would say no because there's still a little bit of bugs in them. I can't even tell you how many times I have wrecked my horse because of a bug in Red Dead 2. It's like, it's jarring. It gets you out of the game.
So many horses.
Yeah, I managed to keep my horse all the way until the end.
I was in the middle of a very, very like emotional quest. It was the like side quest where you find the lady whose like husband just died, and then you're like helping her, teaching her.
I love that
like
side
stuff.
quest.
It was amazing, wonderful, like very emotional side quest. Ruined for me because in one of the cinematics, Arthur's guns decided to be glued to his hands.
Are you serious?
He was like waving around and like showing her stuff, and he had these little pistols glued to his hands because when I entered the cinematic, I had both of my guns out.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I'm a good hands Arthur.
Wow. Yeah.
It was really funny.
That would make it immediately a 95 out of 100 or a 9 out of 10. Just that one moment. Even.
Yeah.
In a 40-hour game, that one moment would knock that 10 off the scale. For me. I mean, that's like you said. I do stand by that. I do think that your 10 out of 10s should be held to a certain accountability. Your 100 out of 100s should be like never.
Yeah.
And if you're doing a 5-point scale, you can kind of keep some 5s, in there, but you should nuance that with caveats and things in your article or your video that goes with that number.
Yeah. So if we could boil down our feelings about review scores to kind of a single should they, shouldn't they?
The score
question.
In general?
Yeah, so should video games be evaluated this way when you consider other mediums? So when you consider movies, when you consider, and in your questions you said considering the way that art is evaluated,
right?
Or considering the way that versus considering the way that movies are evaluated. Like, should we be evaluating games on a like saying that like the most important thing that you should pay attention to is this number that the game has received? Should we be doing this?
No.
Okay.
And I would say that because you don't go into a museum and see numbers next to all the paintings. Or sculptures.
Van Gogh, 9 out of 10.
And there's no single answer to what's good or what's not.
Yeah.
The only difference I can think of, there's painting mechanics that you learn as a painter, but you also have an art style that you do with it. And I think if you took a kindergartner and you put him up against an easel and you had him fling a bunch of paint up there and you tried to knock that off as I'm a masterpiece artist, people would see through that.
Yeah.
It's the same way with sloppy development. Of video games. So there needs to be some sort of thing there. And I don't know enough about how art is rated or received or art galleries, etc., and museums and things to know that.
I'm gonna pour a little bit of hot water on you.
Do it.
Cold water, I guess. I don't know, whatever. I'm gonna say that by simply saying that yes, they aren't necessarily boiled down to a number, but there's been a long history of artists' careers being ruined by reviewers.
Okay.
By critics.
Yeah.
Same to any art form, whether it's art, paintings, whether it's sculpting, whether it's theater, whether it's food, whether it's movies, like
martial arts,
maybe even martial arts. I'm not super familiar with the martial arts critics, but nevertheless, like there's been a long history of like Yes, it's well known. It's a well documented phenomenon that, in fact, critics are often looked down upon for that reason. Like, how dare you criticize this artist? So then, okay, well, what's the answer to that? Like, if critics hold so much power over what is created and what is evaluated, then do we say, well, then let's just stop paying attention to critics? Well, you can't do that either, because then the flip side is, without critics, fewer people would discover new art. And the medium wouldn't really go anywhere, because everyone would just go see Michael Bay movies over and over again, or everyone would just go see James Cameron movies over and over again. Like, you need critics just as much as you, like, it's kind of a, like, we love to hate them, we hate to love them. Like, critics have their role, so you can't just, so even though you might say, like, well, paintings aren't boiled down to a number, well, there have been plenty of critics who have ruined the careers of genius painters because of their reviews and because of the way that they criticize the art they consume. So it's a problem. It's like a necessary evil, I think, in the art world, because it does serve its purpose, and it does. Yeah. And I mean, movies, I think, suffer. Rotten Tomatoes does as much damage to movies, I think, as Metacritic does to video games. But it's still, I am conflicted. Penguin is conflicted about the whole topic, because I both see the value of a Metacritic score while also seeing the damage that it does, and I don't think there's a simple answer as to, like, should we do it this way? I don't know. I think that we as consumers just need to be wiser with things, and we should be viewing some of these shady practices and saying, no, stop, or we're going to boycott, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to do something, I do think that there does need to be more accountability, and the accountability first comes from the culture. Like, the culture, need to say, like, no, we want you to evaluate games, not just on the graphics, not just on the, how robust the multiplayer is or how lag free it is. Like, we want you to also evaluate games on how compelling a story does it tell? How innovative is it? How does it push the medium forward? And I think we're getting there. I think we're growing up as a culture. We're getting older. Our tastes are changing, are starting to mature. So I think that eventually we're going to get to a point where we're like, no, we like this game because of what it does to the medium, like how it pushes the medium forward. Like, so it has some bugs. So it's not graphically the most beautiful game in the world, but you know what, like, it had some pretty cool, like, innovations, and it really, I want to see more games do this. I think that's where the value of reviews comes in handy. And if we pressure more, it comes from the roots. The consumers are the roots. Like, we feed the whole tree. So if we start making our voices heard more and saying we want this out of our reviews because we want this out of our games, I think we'll start to see a shift for the better.
We have. I mean, gaming is newer than movies, so we're still evolving and changing as it goes. But I think one of the perfect answers to your problem set here is my favorite two websites to listen to are and look on YouTube for Eurogamer and Kotaku. Both don't do numbers. They have giant reviews that talk about everything amazing, everything good, and all the things that are wrong with it. And Eurogamer's YouTube channel is actually Digital Foundry. Well, it's a stem of Eurogamer that has an in-depth technical. I mean, this is for, like, the enthusiast people like myself who wants to know the frame rates, the level of detail, graphic settings, the shadow details, the differences between the PS4 Pro and the PlayStation, down to the frames that come out. I mean, like, super detailed videos. So kudos to them for doing that, because they'll flesh out every game that comes out. No numbers.
Nice.
Whether or not you should buy it, and here's why or not. It's awesome.
Here are the reasons.
And they're not the only ones that do it. There's smaller ones, too, that are just like, buy or don't buy. It's a very binary 2 scale.
That's awesome. A 2 scale. I like that. Cool. Well, I like this conversation because it brings in question our role, our podcast. Like, because we hope to grow. We hope to essentially be influencers someday, because we want you guys to like the games that we like. Just like anybody wants people to like what they like.
Right.
So I think it's nice that we tackle this topic now while we're still little and we're still tiny, and we can still sort of form our principles and sort of, hopefully one day we'll actually be able to do reviews. And I'd like to think that we can kind of hopefully be an vehicle of change. Or maybe no one will ever listen to us, and that's fine too.
Here we are.
We're not doing it for you. We're doing it for us. But we do want to hear what your thoughts are. So for those of you who are intrigued by this topic, who've never even thought about it and are just like, I never realized that this little tiny thing had such a big influence on the games I play. So so maybe some of you are super familiar with it and have known about it forever and have lots of thoughts on it. So whether you're just hearing about it for the first time, whether you are super well versed in the topic, or where you're somewhere in the middle, like, we want to hear what your thoughts are. What do you think the role of review scores is, and what other impacts do you think that it has on your buying habits and the games that you play?
I want you to think about this next time you go into a store, Target, Walmart, Kmart, I don't know where you shop, wherever, Amazon, and you find the very first video game ad that you see from that website. And I want you to think about how review scores affected that.
Yeah.
And then get back to me and tell me what you think.
Yeah, and where can they tell us what they think?
You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit. We're all 80-Bit Podsmash. 80bitpodsmash.com is our landing site, where you'll find links to subscribe to our iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. We're everywhere you want to be, and if we're not where you want us to be, let us know, and we'll put ourselves there.
Fantastic. That's 80bitpodsmash.com.
You did that.
I did. I just wanted to be very clear.
Why didn't you do the http://www?
No hyphens, no funny business, just 80bitpodsmash.com.
That's right.
Cool. All right. Well, we look forward to hearing from you, and we will see you again next week.
See you next week.